State Representative John Bryant from Dallas. Progress Texas is leading the way here, protecting the public interest from a legislature that's always been dominated by lobbyists, big money, and these billionaires now are on the scene, and we have to have a strong voice that's urging particularly the Democrats to stay faithful to their campaign promises and protect the public. We need to stick together, and Progress Texas is helping us do that. Our case for the public interest is the one that makes sense, and the other side is typically trying to steer things in a way that helps only some individuals at the expense of the public. So Progress Texas is keeping a rational analysis in the picture and helping us move forward.
It's Friday, February 28th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. The Texas measles outbreak has reached the inevitable finger-pointing stage. Who exactly should we blame for the return of a disease that many appear to have forgotten was dangerous enough to warrant a massive effort to eradicate it to begin with? Perhaps Make America Great Again refers to the 1950s, when measles was a relatively common childhood disease, and by relatively, I mean it came with thousands of annual hospitalizations, many of those resulting in fatalities, many of the rest left with immune system damage, brain disorders, chronic respiratory complications, blindness, hearing loss, and on and on. There were many, many good reasons that the scientific and medical communities developed and deployed a robust vaccination system to get rid of measles. And the current virus is not especially different via mutation than it was before. So whose fault is it that measles has made a stunning comeback that has cost the life of a West Texas child this week, the first measles death in the U.S. since 2015? While the Texas Republican regime, largely in control in this state for over 3 decades now, seems to be saying, don't look at us. Eleanor Klibanoff at the Texas Tribune says that as bad as it's gotten, with a dead child and 18 more hospitalized, it's likely to get worse before it's over. But Governor Greg Abbott, and notably the bright red Republican elected representatives of West Texas, have so far been largely silent, certainly avoiding anything close to encouraging their constituents to consider getting vaccinated. Apparently learning lessons from the COVID pandemic, Republican electeds know that a great many of their voters have developed a general aversion to vaccines, which is just part of a greater degradation of trust in both science and elected authority. State Rep Ken King and State Senator Kevin Sparks, Republicans who both represent Gaines County, both declined to comment to the Trib on any of this. Lubbock Public Health Authority Dr. Ron Cook says folks in his community are talking about throwing measles parties, a highly irresponsible throwback to what could be considered the dark ages when it comes to understanding this disease. Klibanoff writes that anytime a community drops below a vaccination rate of 95%, they are vulnerable to a measles outbreak. Gaines County has one of the lowest vaccination rates in Texas at 82%, but they are by no means alone. About half of the 254 counties in Texas are below that 95% threshold. So if we're pointing fingers, we're pointing 2 of them. One at the irresponsible and misinformed Texans who have allowed online bullshit to jeopardize the health of not only their own families, but their communities at large, and the other at Republican politicians who have been elected in part via their campaign promises to let those voters live in the past. In this case, a very specific subset of those voters, the Mennonite community of Gaines County, from whose private schools the outbreak emerged, clearly has a role to acknowledge here. But let's keep this fair. Eric Killalay at the Houston Chronicle writes that there's nuance to be considered. He talked to Jake Fair, the pastor at Seminole's Mennonite Evangelical Church, who says he himself and his family are in fact vaccinated, and he believes the same to be the case for about half of his congregation. Fair says he's never preached about vaccinations from the pulpit and points out that Mennonite religious doctrine does not oppose vaccinations of any kind specifically, but he does acknowledge both that a sizable conservative faction known as the Old Colony Mennonites, plus a large number of equally conservative non-Mennonites in Gaines County likely have avoided their shots. It's important to acknowledge that while this outbreak did emerge from an area with a large Mennonite population, that has little to do with how they worship. This isn't about religion, it's about the denial of science. Case in point, anti-vax crusader and profiteer Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's also been extraordinarily nonchalant about this outbreak. Chris Walker at Truth Out notes that another aspect of Kennedy and the Trump administration's reaction has been a surprise cancellation yesterday of the Food and Drug Administration's annual meeting of its advisors to discuss the next season's influenza vaccines, leading Paul Offit, one of those advisors and director of the Vaccine Education Center at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, to wonder in a CBS News interview, quote, "We're all left trying to understand what's going on. Why was this meeting canceled? It's an important meeting. What's the plan for flu vaccines this year?" Unquote. Staying ahead of infectious disease does not appear to be a very high priority for Trump 2.0. A much higher priority for Trump and his boss Elon Musk is firing as many people from the federal workforce as they can, as quickly as they can. Results be damned. One bit of evidence can be found out in far west Texas. Ariana Garcia at the Houston Chronicle says huge lines of cars up to a mile long developed trying to get into Big Bend National Park over the recent President's Day weekend, just days after the National Park Service fired over 1,000 employees nationwide under sweeping Trump-Musk-Doge cost-cutting measures. Those who persevere through that wait and manage to get into our parks are likely to face piled-up trash and, more significantly, neglected safety hazard management in terrain that's typically more wild and rugged than most parkgoers are used to at home. Somebody wake us up when America is great again. Not to be outdone, our state officials are doing all they can to shoot ourselves in the boot, and boots are expensive. Just ask Western wear enthusiast and Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller, who's launched a new crusade against, well, it appears to be against your teeth. The San Antonio Express-News editorial board weighs in on Miller's new battle against fluoride in public drinking water, reminding us of Miller's track record in such matters. He advocated for serving cupcakes in public schools, used over $1,000 in campaign and state money to travel out of state to get a so-called Jesus shot to combat chronic pain, a product sold by only one quack doctor in Oklahoma, and more recently has endorsed raw milk, which is commonly swimming with E. coli, salmonella, and listeria. In short, Sid Miller is the last guy you want weighing in on what's in your water. Republicans at the Capitol in the 89th legislative session as the weekend arrives are also in the boot-shooting business. Consider House Bill 3401 from freshman East Texas State Rep Brent Money, which seeks to repeal allowances for insupportability as grounds for divorce. That's the banning of no-fault divorce we've been talking about as the next step in the Republican war on women. He's also sponsored HB 3399, which expands current Texas law against gender transitioning care for minors to the rest of us. Money essentially wants to outlaw gender transition care, period. And Andrew Weber at KUT in Austin writes on Senate Bill 781 from Senator Phil King of Northeast DFW, which would require law enforcement agencies across Texas to conceal the discipline records of their police officers from public view. What benefit exactly that would provide for public safety or public confidence in our police remains a mystery, as Senator King declined KUT's request for a comment on his bill. Our funding at Progress Texas is rarely sufficient for us to plan much more than a quarter or two ahead, but the conservative disinformation machine that we oppose has no such obstacle. They're funded by oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups. Our regular everyday listeners form a key component of our funding here at Progress Texas, so if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks so much to Larry Russell, Jeffrey Learman, and Sandra Seifert, all of whom have joined the team lately. We appreciate all of you. For our Austin listeners in particular, but really to all of you, the Amplify Austin Day season is officially underway. This year's early giving period has started. Look up Progress Texas at amplifyatx.org or see the direct link in the show notes. The official I Live Here, I Give Here Amplify Austin Day is coming up next week. It starts on the evening of Wednesday, March 5th and continues through the evening of Thursday, March 6th. Your donation helps keep this podcast coming every morning and also supports our overall mission to fight against disinformation and for progress in Texas, and we thank you in advance. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Friday, February 28th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.